Pokemon Gen 10's announcement is right around the corner, but today I wanted to look further into the future and see what awaits us. For those of you who don't know, thanks to the teraleak, we have information of the next Pokemon games up until 2030. We do know the next major game is going to be a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, which is codenamed Gaia, or Wind and Wave as we have been calling it. But there's multiple other projects being worked on as we speak. For example, codename Ringo, or also known as Legends Galar, will be released in 2027 or 2028. And then Project Seed, which will be 2029. And then all the information we have for Generation 11 is that it's set for 2030, which could be subject to change. But as of now, we all of this could change. Potentially, all of these games could get delayed by a year, except for Gen 10. I'm confident that that is late next year. But to get to the point, I do think that there is one game here that a lot of people would love to see, that a lot of people are waiting to see, that we don't see, which is Pokemon Black and White remakes. We got it with Diamond and Pearl during the Switch era. We got it with Oraz during the 3DS era. We got it with Heart Gold, Soul Silver, the DS era, and so on and so on. But we haven't heard anything about a Pokemon Black and White remake yet, or anything Unova related in general. I think a lot of people would be interested in a Legends Unova, but with Legends Galar being the leaked game, of course, things, as I said, could be subject to change. I don't think that's the path they're going to be going. It would be cool to see the original Dragon and Unova in the past, but I don't think that's the route we're going. I do think that these are going to be much higher quality remakes than Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, especially assuming Game Freak's main team is going to be the one working on the game and obviously not Ilka. I do think that that could be part of the reason why we don't see that in the files yet. I'm sure they're thinking of it, but maybe it just hasn't started development. And I think they want to take their time and properly, make a game that's optimized well for the Switch and not just cheapy graphics. Now, as I briefly mentioned earlier, I do think there are multiple routes we could go. We could see another sequel, like a Black and White 3. We could see a combination of the first two games remade. So you play through Black and White, and then maybe a new little story area 2 years pass. You go in and start a new adventure in Black and White 2. So there'd be like 16 gyms, similar to Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Gold Silver, whatever you want to compare it to. We could go down that route. Maybe too good to be true. Probably. We could see a Legends game. Assuming this game is after Gen 11, which is supposed to be 2030, that is a real possibility that yet another Legends game would come out. Maybe 2031, 32, maybe even 33. Thinking really far in the future. And then again, that could be set in the past, so like a prequel to Black and White. We see what the original dragon looks like, kind of how Reshiram and Zekrom came. These are just kind of thoughts off the top of my head. There's no proof of any of this yet, but again, we are still far away from seeing this. But Black and White being one of my favorite games, I would love to see, a more open world, less linear version of it. And I really do believe that a Legends game almost fits the Unova region perfectly, because when you think about it, the game is so story based. So when you kind of take an approach at remaking it, I do think like you could tell a whole story in this big open world game without forcing us to be so linear, because now we have the hardware to do it. That may have not been possible in the DS. You look at Gen 5 early builds, they were much different and much more 3D like, um, with more people being around, almost like an MMO. But my guess is I got cut because DS hardware just wasn't good enough for what they were planning. But now with the Switch 2, eh, endless possibilities. I do think that we could see, some kind of big open world approach while still telling a whole big interesting story, and we won't have hardware to hold us back this time around. As for any like hopes for Generation 5 remakes, I gotta say, we gotta have some kind of returning mechanic, whether that's Mega Evolution or even in Gen 10, we're hearing that there may be some kind of new gimmick with the weather. So, whatever Gen 11 is focused on is what I would love to see. In other words, I don't want a repeat of BDSP where, okay, sure, they gave us the XP share for everyone. That was new. But other than that, just felt like a straight Diamond Pearl remake, no mentions to Platinum at all. With Black and White, I do think I would love to see, some of Black and White 2 incorporated, as I mentioned earlier, and some of whatever generation, so Gen 11, whatever those games introduce. I believe we should have that graphic style, those gimmicks in the game. But what are your hopes for Pokemon Black and White remakes? Do you think they will ever happen? Do you think Game Freak will incorporate a new way to revisit other regions? Because we do know Project Seed is supposed to be the first 4 Japanese regions: Kanto, Hoenn, Johto, Sinnoh, for example. Do you guys think maybe Legends will be just the new approach since they're quite popular games? Do you even think these games will be on Switch 2? Do you think it could be something further down the line where maybe it's for Switch 3, or maybe a ZA situation where it's for Switch 2 and 3? With Gen 11 being planned out, what do you guys see for the future? I want to know. Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and staying this far. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.